there is no scientific foundation in all these political theories. So I would say that first think about your argument. Is your one really statistically, scientifically justified argument or not? If not, this is what you like in the society. You want certain things in the society. I also want certain things in the society. Is there scientific evidence that we can come and never? That's just philosophical talk, right? I want this society this way, you want that way, right? Then we can sit down. Why do you want it that way and why I want it this way, right? But somehow people think that it's really hard to solve those problems, so they have shifted the whole discussion to another thing. Like, let's fact check, or not even, there are no facts here, right? It's just political talk. Let's check each other political views. Like the debate was to solve the problems, and we have diverted ourselves from the debate. Instead, how to say things very well and how to not say things very well.
I think the part two would be some society things. And when I first contacted to you, I think like fact and fake is one of the big topic in this modern society. And so my first questions to this topic is, in your viewpoint, what is the most underrated value in this modern society, do you think?
Okay, so I would say yes, you have mentioned that these things are becoming more and more important, right? What are facts and what are fake things, right? Which are not factually correct, as I said, like the domain of physics, etc., right? Since there is 1 in 10 million chance that you haven't found the Higgs boson, this means that I'm telling you, you are wrong, right? Because arguments do not solve problems, right? In physics, it's not that we are sitting there and arguing the whole day that this and that. No, you have to actually go in there and test it. And as Richard Feynman used to say, no matter how beautiful your theory is, if it doesn't agree with the experiment, it's just a hypothesis, right? And therefore, when people say like, look, this could be wrong, right? This is not a fact. There is a chance of error in there, right? That's much better than saying something which has no uncertainty in it. Saying that there is an electron because we have performed so many different experiments on it, and the chances that we are wrong is really, really teeny tiny. Still, there is this possibility, right? Which is really, really teeny tiny because you cannot be certain about anything. But saying that there is no electron, having performed no experiment, is like the uncertainty is like plus minus 1, right?
Yeah.
Either I can be bullshitting or I could be right?
Yeah.
So there you see that the uncertainty is so big on this statement, right? It's this much big. I could be wrong, I could be right. While in the scientific case, we know that there is an electron and it has become really, 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 really this much, right? It has shrunk down to really, really, really small amount. And therefore, this is why it's valued more, right? And therefore, facts are often more important, right? Because we want certainty, surety in this world, right? So like our systems, we want our systems around us to also function very well. And this is why factual information is important. As you and I discussed, I want to put up a satellite up there. How much is the chance that at what time frame will it degrade? I want to have a mobile phone. What is the chance that it will not explode in my pocket? All these things depend on these facts that we go and test regularly, right?
Yeah.
And if you have, let's say, not factual information, then these systems that you built around them could be also flawed, right? And then they could all crumble down. And this is why facts are important. And the scientific method is one of the ways that we know so far, the best way to find out these facts, right? Right now we haven't found out another way. If we found, maybe we will shift to that. But right now that's the only way. Now coming towards AI, the problem with these large language models is that they have been trained on the entire data of the internet. And the issue is that if something appears more and more, you get more and more neurons attached to that thing, like humans, right? So if you see something more often and more often, it becomes your reality, right? If you hear something more and more and more and more, you think like maybe the flat earthers are right? And that's the thing with LLMs, right? Since they have seen so much bullshit data, then they speak out sometimes bullshit data. That's one part. This is why we need checks and balances on those things, right? The other thing is that LLMs also hallucinates. That's by their nature, right? That they have randomness in there. And therefore the answer could vary even though it has seen a really factual data, right? Correct data, whatever. It could hallucinate. And since more and more people are using LLMs to judge whether what they are saying or what the other person is saying is factual or not, this makes this debate really like tilted, right? That more and more unfactual stuff could come out, right? And sometimes when people look at now papers, etc., where people are saying these are basically LLM returns, are the citations that the LLM has put there is basically hallucination. No one goes in there and then checks the real scientific papers, right? So in my opinion, we think that it has helped us to make our arguments much better. Up to a certain extent, yes. But when it comes to, let's say, policy making or really fundamental research or something like that, using it for fixing your grammar or collecting ideas, etc., is okay. But for factuality checking, that's not a tool. You right now need a human to sit in there, right, to do all these things yourself.
Then why do you think it's really hard, especially hard to distinguish the fake and fact in this modern society?
Because the noise, right, as I said, if there is too much noise around you, right, then the signal could be there, right, but the signal is faint, right, it could not reach you. And if you are overwhelmed by, let's say, most people are, as I know, by watching TVs, movies, media, etc., right, most of the time they are doing those things, right, and once in a while they go to some scientific argument or some scientific thing, right, and therefore fakes are there, but they are not such a big part of life, right? While the remaining part is like this noise, which is all the time in there, right? And another book that I could recommend is that Thinking Fast and Slow. So Daniel Kahneman, who wrote it, and he also won the Nobel Prize in economics, and he mentions that we have these two types of brains, the fast thinking and the slow thinking. The slow thinking is the one which we think we are, right? Which takes an argument, splits it apart, takes individual part of the argument, thinks it over, right, whether it is multiplication involved in there, division involved there, and then combines every number, everything really well, right, or pupils dilate when we start to do those type of things, right, or BP rises or pulse increases, right, more sugar flows into the blood. But that system gets tired very quickly, and most of the time we are this fast thinking ones, this autopilot. And this autopilot is seeing a lot of the time, a lot of the noise, and then it is also thinking and saying all that noise, right? And therefore factuality can go down. That if you hear more and more false things, you would also be repeating them without knowing them, right? There could be such certain things, right? That what if, let's say you have a cold, is it a good idea to have vitamin C or not? And most people will tell you, like, that's a good idea. Is there scientific evidence behind this? It has been studied extensively. There is no scientific evidence. If you give it in the beginning, there is a 10% chance of betterment, but that 10% basically comes from placebo effect. And the person who popularized this was a Nobel Prize winner in chemistry, and he did it, but he had no experiments. And therefore certain things go on like this, right? And since you hear them, so many people are spending so much money on such things without thinking, right? And factual information is then never reaching the public, right? It's just this one narrative which clicks, gets viral, and then everyone just follows it, right? And this is why I'm saying that this anecdotal evidence is okay in a case where there is no other information available. But if there is statistical information available, then anecdotal evidence is not that much of a big thing to remove this statistical evidence, right? You could say that the statistical evidence is not covering that case, but that one is much bigger, right?
Then do you think that PC...
Political correctness?
Yeah, that's right. Political correctness is the same with the factfulness?
No, I would not say. As I said, like, even psychology is an individual human-based studies, right? Then a group of humans, but studying individual behaviors. The number of parameters are too many, right? As I said, genetics, where you grew up, what path you took. So many different number of parameters. And the sample size is like 5 people. And you are studying it, right? And then saying things like, for example, my way of saying and thinking is the only way of thinking, right? That's absurd, right? As I said, there is no scientific foundation in all these political theories, right? I am a left-leaning guy because I like it, right? But there is no moral code, right? So the thing is that whenever you are having an argument with someone, I would say that first think about your argument, right? Is your one really statistically, scientifically justified argument or not? If not, this is what you like in the society. Okay, then your argument will not change the other person's argument. As I said, right, we have seen it in so many studies. Arguments don't change people. It's more behavior. Be nice, be kind, and I think that changes people much more than just arguments for the sake of arguments, right? And therefore, when the Soviets were making the bomb, some of scientists in the US were saying like, let's bomb them before they build it, so we have an advantage. While others asked mathematicians, like, what do you guys think? What is a good strategy? And therefore you will see the Axelrod-Prisoner dilemma, right? Whether you want to compete two strategies, right? And you want to see which strategy wins. And in this dilemma, you see that, look, tit for tat was the best strategy, right? So you always start positive and nice to the other person. If they do bad things to you, then revert back. But as soon as they turn back to the right kind of things to you, or they become positive, then you should also become positive. And that's the best strategy. But you see, it always starts positive. So if you see a stranger and you are positive, right, that's the best strategy that you can have, right, with someone. And therefore, you give more safety, assurance, etc., to people around you, right? While if you start negative, and the other person also retaliates in negative, and then you also retaliate, that's not a good strategy, right?
Like a cynical.
Yeah, I meant it in the way of having a discussion or a debate and having the dignity, right? So that you never lose the human dignity. So it goes from my political view, people, right, the left wing, they kind of go like that. But it also goes for the right wing, right? That if they want to come with arguments, come with human dignity, right? And target the argument, not the person, right? If you have certain issues with certain arguments, then target them. And I think that's a healthy way to have a discussion, right? That you want certain things in the society, I also want certain things in the society. Is there scientific evidence that we can come and never, that's just philosophical talk, right? I want this society this way, you want that way, right? Then we can sit down, why do you want it that way and why I want it this way, right? But somehow people think that it's really hard to solve those problems. So they have shifted the whole discussion to another thing, right? Like, let's fact check, or not even, there are no facts here, right? It's just political talk. Let's check each other political views. And that, in my opinion, has shifted the debate, right? Like the debate was to solve the problems, right? And we have diverted ourselves from the debate. Instead, how to say things very well and how to not say things very well, which is basically the same way as people back then were saying, right? Like, if you want to sit properly, how do you sit properly? And if you want to be a woman, how do you be a woman, wear proper clothes and say these things, right? It's the same kind of restriction that we are putting on people, right?
When we see the media, we all go to like the left side or right side. So how do you think about that opinion?
Yeah, I think you are right. There is some truth to this part, that people are getting more polarized.
Oh yeah,
right?
polarized, that's right.
And this polarization again comes to these LLMs and other models, right, which normally people call AI. So these models are showing us on YouTube, on Facebook, Instagram, whatever we use, those type of views which agree with us, right? And therefore, they have one type of audience which only goes for those views. Another type of audience goes for another type of views, right? And then they always are in this bubble, right? And when these two bubbles meet, this is like on one topic 0% tolerance, and this is like 99% tolerance. The Bayesian approach would never work here, because you have certain proper probability, and then you update this probability. But if your prior probability is 0, it's a multiplication, the Bayesian approach, right? So whatever next probability you get, it gets again 0. So a discussion between these two extremes is really difficult, right? As you mentioned, it's chaos, right? And therefore, this polarization is very dangerous, right? We need somehow to introduce, let's say, 10% or 20% content into this group and also into this group from the other side. Maybe not too extreme, but to bring it to the middle ground, right? And this is why certain governments could say that let's make these industries, right, to obey certain rules. And normally these industries, it's a tough challenge, because it's not a science that they can go in and apply certain formula and see, right? We can have certain metrics, but on which topic, right? And everything is a spectrum. Then where you decide these lines, right? Which is the the people. These boundaries are not so clear.
Then, like when I learned about the philosophy of the science, if we say some sentence is a science, then that sentence could have the possibility to be debated. So I think that scientific thinking can give more tips to distinguish fake and fact for public people. So could you give a tips for distinguishing fake and fact?
Exactly,
public?
like as you mentioned, right? Like always try to be skeptical, right? But skeptical in a sense that you are skeptical to everything, then you are basically also not good, right?
Yeah.
You have to look at evidence, right? And then you should also set a threshold, as I said, right? Is this threshold that this thing has been studied on 100 people? Or is this threshold, let's say, in the form of a vaccine which has been tested on 100,000 people, right? When is the right time so that I take it, right? And the thing about truths and facts is that, as we are saying, this is getting more and more nuanced, right? Because reaching the truth for the normal people could be not so easy, because you will not have the time to go to Google Scholar or find out articles, etc., etc.
That's right.
Therefore, if you want to follow some advice, I would say that follow the advice of, let's say, if you are interested in skincare, then let's say follow the advice of 5 dermatologists on YouTube. Some of them will say something extreme, right? But some of them will say something which is all the time core. And even in here you are sampling, right? If you assume that all of them do not know any scientific paper, and then 3 of them saying like something which is agreeing on their part, right? From that you could think like, okay, this part has become scientific consensus because the other extremes are only talked by this guy and that guy. And always listen to their argument as well, right? Like, are they quoting studies? Are they quoting the number of participants in the study for this skincare product, right? And then go and then take their opinion, right? If they are saying like, since I'm an authority and I say this is good for you, they're just selling you some product, right? Be careful. But when you listen to them and they are saying like this amount of study has been performed with this many people and this much result has been shown, always look at 1 sigma, 2 sigma, how much uncertainties are there, right? And if someone talks about these numbers, you can learn these things in a day or 2 or 3 maximum, right? By taking some small course. You can then understand like, okay, this person is talking some sensible things, right? The same goes, let's say, for if you want to learn about other things, right? For example, as you mentioned, like politics or maybe economics, right? You can go to different people, different professors, right? Listen to different views and then see what is the common core theme and where the deviations are, right? And then you can see like, okay, the consensus is here while the other things are the extremes. On the other hand, if you go to people who have no any scientific knowledge behind them, right? And you can always test the middle points that you found yourself, right? If they are saying it right or not. But this way you get more and more information that is middle everywhere, and then you have easy check on some information, right? While the other stuff has been shit and has been removed, right? While if you go to an influencer who talks about skincare, then this is not sampled from a scientific background, right? It's coming from everywhere, right? And therefore, 2 will agree here, 3 will agree here. Even finding a consensus over here is very, very difficult, right? Like put banana skin on your face, put cucumber skin on your face, put this thing on your face, put that thing on your face. And therefore, you will have a lot of spectrum, right? And you wouldn't know which one is the right thing, right? And therefore, listening to people who might have certain knowledge in the field kind of reduces that scope for you, right? So that you know what works, what not. And even that, when you listen to less amount of people, you see like what really, really then works and what doesn't work, right?